So I wanted to give everyone my poetics. It can be done in 4 lines. This is by the famous Chinese Zen master Mumun, who compiled the Mumun Kwan. And it's a commentary on one of the koans. And it says, words cannot show truth. Speech cannot point into nature. One who holds words is dead. One who attaches to sentences is lost. So I have it saved in my computer. It says my poetics. I didn't write it. Okay. So actually, I wasn't planning to read anything long, but I will read a piece. So Diamond Notebooks. It's very strange. People think I have Buddhist references. I don't. So I wrote this thing called Diamond Notebooks, and I get an email. And somebody says, were you referring to the Diamond Sutra? And no, I wasn't referring to the Diamond Sutra. I don't know what I was referring to. But anyway, this is a little piece of it. The accident of birth, the way fingers and toes line up on the table, that we dispassionately look down upon as though children did not drop off one by one every day, like carrots under the knife, as if everything were splayed out before us, as if everything were splayed out before us when? As if everything were inevitable, as if everything were chosen. I chose you. I fell in love with you. This symmetry, 2 sides of a hand held up for our inspection, but it is not one hand. It is Lord Krishna, the magician. It is 2 hands passed under the guillotine. It is 1 hand again. Everyone applauds the trick, balloons rising from the fenced-in backyard and the smell of hot dogs and birthday cake, children running under legs and getting caught again. As if it were enough to have a sunny childhood and all the accoutrements which may or may not disqualify us later, the skateboard and the cul-de-sac, severing us from whatever came before. Who can remember the child on a winter morning sent out to fetch water from the well, the way the bucket splashed, her high-top shoes on the slick ice, the wind whipping her skirts against her unwashed legs. So that's just a little piece of a 50-page poem that in some sense has something to do with the Bosnian wars of the 90s. So the lines in that poem look like that. The original chapbook was printed sideways because the lines are so long. So now we'll go to something. We're just going to skip through a lot of stuff. Where did I put my watch? I have to be able to see it. Okay. So these poems kind of look like that. They look different. Day, his young hands, wrong angled, found wanting, transmuted through so that, balanced over edge, each foot, slippage among stone inside, eyes, tracing blue pagodas, the neon light, hair in light, the light shirt sagging, the shadow whisper, the thing unfixed. And another one from that series. Without narrative, tongue already sleeping, without touch, the napkins green, foreboding. Trail of forest light, trail of other bone, other loss, her foot inside, no privilege. And this one used to be my favorite poem that I've written, but then it got replaced by others, so, but I really like this poem. No, I shouldn't say that. Maybe you won't, but okay. In the high forest canopy, Mr. and Mrs. Ant followed dutifully. The 100-year soldier, heart lost, compunction. Everything for us. Precise incision, mastery of gravel underneath, stomach and stone bunker, while leaf fungus blooms. Penis folded under, owl call and nut crack, the slightest grass growing, no excuse. And then I realized about 10 years ago that I'd never written about sex. I thought it would be a good thing to do. So I wrote these poems, and they're very tight on the page, like that, okay? Don't worry, this is definitely not rated X. Your tongue like cat under mollusk, drift motion to ease sentence calming proposition as if underwater to reach through gear shift such automatic dreams. For emptiness sake, this done, format, slight perturbation, correction, on course, stayed the steady hand and light turned lower, never low enough, but dark too much, not dark either. As if matter's particular presentation, my hand in dream reaching through car to where your eyes, hands, face, all body stuff, open, close in daylight, the street as if mind clairvoyant. As sleeping lies bone under breath, whisper pulse invisible between hand portal, reflect each skin to skin, finger weight the justification of it without effort skimming. Gesture plumes within smoke wreaths, animate suspension and call, no motion, all sound incorporate, internalized in your breath and silent. Underhand divisible, bearing light, no notion, such concentrate needs no purpose, without barbarism, leisure, the lapped shores forgiven. This is sort of like a tour through 30 years of work here, so, okay. And then there's this series here, and you see the page looks different. And these are kind of, I don't know what they are, they're kind of poems about insanity in a way. I'll just read you a few of them. Baboon, yeah, titles, Baboon. And what I'd like to do is do them on one breath, because they're meant to be read like on one breath, but I can't hold my breath that long. So I'll have to breathe, but you should imagine that it's just one breath. Baboon. The physiological trace of anxiety in its wordless form, appearing as a baboon or a flock of baboons with lizard skin pressing out from the chest and stomach, these creatures inside him with whom he must become intimate before they will leave him alone. One by one, dispersing and replaced, always silent in the same crouched pose, poised for something, expressionless as only baboons can be expressionless, eyes glowing. If they would slip through his pores, carrying their bags with him, as if realizing that the train isn't coming and it's time to go home, instead of always watching in the stillness to which his body begs forgiveness, not comprehending what it is that it has done, so much must have been done. The deserving and the undeserving joined together as if they could be apart. Leaves thrown against glass and birds rising up against the luxury of boredom, against desire. His luxury is the slight cellular tremble that signals something wrong, tightening here and there, the signal not quite speaking its name, so that constant vigilance is called for and perpetual rebuke. Whatever the name, it is not called for, though surely it must be deserved, in order to preserve the semblance of order, the semblance of place, and not of flight. Bone. Small pulses as light under the skin, no literal interpretation, their swift movement. Bone is no hindrance. Skin is untouched and not distracted. Within this flickering light, body is made manifest, the dryness of muscle and of breathing. As if a thin metal sheet has slipped into the skull, there is no feeling in this, a cylindrical lamina of impossibly thin dimensions, moving in its own direction, unstoppable. In response, the distance between feet and hands becomes variable, moving as the light beings move on the wall, their ship gone, their mission forgotten. In the night, her eyes open, waiting for them. They are watching her. This collusion between being and being, wall and air, and the bed comforter between them. Where are you from? Why don't you speak to me? I cannot control the size of my limbs. They keep changing on me. I can't keep track of it. Reality is signaled by discrepancy, as chaos signals function, and coherence is a sign of disease. That reference, coherence is a sign of disease, a precursor of an epileptic seizure is that all of a sudden your brain waves are coherent instead of chaotic. Okay. Oh, I'm skipping so much stuff. So maybe I should not skip quite so much pleasant stuff. Railroad track south of Del Mar, where gravel, sand, sure feet and boards, the secret valley as sun, crouched, hidden, in the dry light. In the dry light, her hair cover deleted, change of view and circumstance, such mirrorings, wantings, and gone forth. So those were sort of little, I think I called them postcards. We'd go places and I'd read And so then the next group of poems, these actually come out of Hurricane Katrina, but as you can sort of tell, if I say something comes out of it, doesn't mean it's about it, and it doesn't mean it's even going to mention it, and it doesn't mean it's going to have any reference to it, but somehow these come out of Hurricane Katrina. My husband's from New Orleans. Antelope. Oh, and they're look like this on the page. They actually look conventional. Okay. Antelope. The arm extends and flourishes. Water drips from the antelope's feet. People stand with shovels on the sidewalk. Nobody is who you think they are. Fish. We put fish inside boxes, but it didn't help. Money didn't help. Grass came out of his mouth, and he wasn't even dead yet. Cake. How can I give you anything? You have already taken everything. She has nothing. You can't give her anything. I tried to give her cake, but she turned away. If you find it funny, you can laugh. This one's not funny. Tree. It's really not. Tree. He went into the attic. She found him in a tree. 1,000 arms are not enough. Whatever fills the sky is not enough. Okay, so now you can laugh because, so this guy, Jeffrey Lee from Cranesville Books, and he comes up with this, he comes up with these sort of tasks for people to do, and he sort of writes to, you know, some of his friends, and then they write to their friends. You can't, like, do this without somehow having a contact. So I was a friend of one of his friends, and now I get the tasks directly. So this task was to write a 31-word, I hate the phrase, prose poem, okay, no lineation, you know, write a 31-syllable poem. And I'm an overachiever, so I read 31 of them. And then he took the, you know, the ones so people would send them to him, and the ones he liked. It was really great. He published them like as little cards. You know, you got this little package and you opened it up. This is definitely, you know, specialty publishing. You opened it up and there were all these little cards with these little 31-syllable poems. So I'm going to read a few of those. They were really fun. I mean, I got addicted to them. I was very sorry to stop. It was just a lot of fun. The drops were on the inside, but the plastic was clear, so she thought they were on the outside, and she tried to wipe them off, wondering what pronoun to use. You have to be careful. You can't say very much. If you look too long at the sky, it will become something else, maybe an insect. Then what will you do? Where's my favorite one? There we go. 31 blackbirds sitting on a line. One said to the other, my toes hurt, my teeth ache, I'm a wreck. The other said, too many adjectives. This is called parallel play. When he was done poking his head out, he was able to see it all spread out in front of him. Whether he liked it or not, there it was, incommensurable. I'm going to come back to this later, but right now, I'm going to go to some new stuff. John, are you going to do new stuff? Yes, I'm going to do new stuff. Which one is this one? Okay, so I wrote these. This is, I'm going to read 4 of these ghazals. So do you know what a ghazal is? So a ghazal is this, it's this Arabic form, and it's couplets. And they're sort of not supposed to connect. It's an interesting form because they're not supposed to connect. And of course, in Arabic, it has all kinds of metric kind of things, but in English it doesn't, so you have a lot more freedom in English. And what I did is I started writing these poems in couplets, and they were kind of about unrequited love, which since I've been married for 33 years is a strange thing for me to write about. And I really didn't like them. And so what I did is I ran them through Babelfish, if you don't know that, these translator programs. So I run it like, you know, English to French, French to Swedish, Swedish to Chinese, Chinese back to English. And then, you know, and I do each one like several times. So I had all these sort of things spread out, you know, in front of me to look at. And it was like, it was sort of like sculpture. You know, you had these things sitting there and you kind of look at them and then you kind of put them together. And what it was like doing it through Babelfish, I mean, it sounds like, you know, one of these kind of like intellectual games, but actually what it was like discovering a structure that you didn't know was there in the poem. And so it sort of like made something apparent that hadn't been apparent before. Because when we sort of write directly, what happens is we fall into habits. And we don't really see what it is that we're doing, we're just falling into these habits. And so I was shaking myself out of those habits, and then I could see what was actually there. So that was fun. So I want to read you the first version of the first one, which is terrible, so you'll see what I mean. It's called Tongue, and it goes, "My beloved calls me at home, and I tell him, don't do it. I will be thrown into the bat cave. My money will no longer work. My tongue will be given to birds, and yours glued to the lamppost." So that's, you know, glib. I mean, I'm sorry, it's glib. Maybe, I don't know. But anyway, here's what came out. Tongue. "Beloved," says to him from that house shouting, "thrown with a bat oyster, qualitative thing. Money unable to operate, lamppost and tongue binding, glued to birds, don't do it." Shirt. "Like salt, disappears visible. You call your eye stop, you call motion. Stop speaking, the pause glance. Because your shirt counts, buttons. Protecting this with anything, impossible." Mores. "Dead time face, heart choose, eyes clean. Which are to things no arm but you. Possible here to there, again. Lustrous symbol, unrecognized. Twinkle conjure pike, shoes, gloss, face." I love twinkle, who could come up with twinkle conjure pike? You gotta go through Babelfish. Okay, worm. "He was the earthworm, arrived with me. 40 forgotten years, and for this my eye. Dives into pond, absence of bottom. Poor person, lacking in basis. Moves into house, groundless. The non-root, non-capacity. Perhaps continuous simply, or follow." And then I must read very fast. I'm almost done. So the next bunch of poems are, see, I do them in italics because they're letters, so I do it in the script. Okay, they're letters, and they're sort of to like fictitious people and real people and all that stuff. So, Dear S. Dear S. I tried to stop you, but was stopped at the light. Branches reached under my sweater and I couldn't go forward. There were no leaves, which made it worse. But it didn't matter because whenever I put a hand out, it was invisible. Whenever I winced, there was someone who thought I was applauding, like when you eat cereal and it's the wrong kind, and worse yet, you've run out. That's what I thought I was doing, but no matter what, I did. Trying was irrelevant. Running aground was like running amok. Meanwhile, you were stepping on all the bodies. You didn't even have the decency to step over them. What was I to think about that? And now you've reached your conclusion. It's way over the fence. I hope you like it there. Actually, I don't. Dear A. You let the dog in, now the whole house exploded like a Chinese mine shaft. R.E. your feet. When will you stop gnawing on them? Everyone is embarrassed. The moon keeps shifting underneath and I've missed my turn once already. Had to go around the parking lot a second time. Sometimes things come in threes, but it's too much the way this keeps happening. Tonight I was watching videos of TM and the way his hands kept trading off the tune, his fingers splaying. I'd never seen anything like it. His head was rolling down the tunnel, but it made no difference. Pay attention to this, I beg you, for your own sake. Dear D. I ask you to repair the roof and you give me a mustache to go with your hooded eyes in Hamburg. Meanwhile, the roof is leaking, the children have no food, and nothing is where it is supposed to be. Books move around, marbles roll underfoot, the rule of threes continues to manufacture itself and will not stop even when asked. Is it too much to have a bed to sleep in? Is it too much to have a spoon that can be placed on a shelf along with a memory of wine glasses and a jar of vinegar? How can things keep multiplying day by day when everyone knows they are shrinking? The catastrophe arrived unrecognized. Its signs are everywhere, but they are so shy no one notices them. Only the worm pauses, alert on the sidewalk. If I were a manatee, I'd know how to swim. I hope this isn't prophetic. We're getting new windows put in the house in about a week. Yes. Dear Jay, this is about someone we know who committed suicide. Dear Jay, you got the order wrong. It's first her, then you, but you switched it, and now it's just your shoes on the chair. The hall's gone dark, and no one knows where to find you. My hair is your hair, but my eyes are not your eyes. We are all reeling. It only looks like dancing. Nobody can tell a park from a closet. It's all tunnels from here, like horses. Head over heels, that's what they say, or straight down like a diver. What form do things take? Today, while pulling weeds, I got dizzy. Someone said I stood up too fast, but I know that isn't it. Whatever it is won't be a bargain. Nothing on this side is a bargain. How is it on yours? And then I'm going to close. Short reading. Should I read more? No. Yes? Slip through Diamond. I'll read a little more then. I'll read the first page of Diamond Notebooks because my husband loves it so much. What is the unit here and how can we find it? People who can't decode reading but can talk, and others who can't talk but make sounds anyway. What about babies who point, the different ways of saying on, like Chinese, the 6 pronunciations of ma, and each means something else. So the syllable is on to something. But not everything, a child from Kansas saying git and unable to spell it correctly, the instantaneous understanding of lovers and others which dissolves sooner or later as the breath moves or bills come due or something terrible happens. The secret disintegration of the heart until it spasms and there is terrible pain and maybe something further happens like death or maybe not, but things like this cannot be avoided. The usefulness of words like something, this, the Sanskrit tata, meaning this, which do better than anything else at explaining things, the love of thought, that keeps us up at night in the dark like an old friend, turning it over and over until one night the pain spreads from the chest into the arms, or the man is gasping at the window, his asthma gone so bad that nothing can save him, and his wife finds him in the morning. Where is she going to go? The boy with his neat haircut crying in the bus about to leave Sarajevo, his father's hand pressed against the window from outside. Soon the scenery will change. The boy is scared, but he has never been so far before. So in some ways it seems wonderful. Red radio tower lights, red lights on cars, red traffic lights, all these red lights in improbable balance, such beauty you could hardly speak about back when children used to tell their future, white lights on the St. Elizabeth Bridge in Budapest across the Danube near the park, where bats and swallows flew, impossible to forget the traffic, swaying in the night in the tram, curves of accordion-like material connecting its segments, heading for the rock concert, and the old woman who for 1 forint gave you exactly 1 piece of waxy toilet paper. Everybody says, the war will not come here, but then it comes and nothing can be done about it. Was his hair more like water the way it moved around his shoulders? He told her it was for the movies, as if that were not a movie they were in. Each absent-mindedly picking up props and putting them down again, children chattering at the bus stop for the deaf, their arms like birds, decay still over a mile away. This was before the soda fountain burned down, homeless people very ill, stumbling into seats, leaning on each other while no one else knew what to do. That is why we keep our eyes averted. Why women click along the street so fast. She tells me to live in a city, living anywhere else is denial. She tells me anything while I lean on someone's refrigerator. This is the tension between your own and everyone else's, the father's voice echoing down the hall. Why is his family hiding? The embalmer bent over the body of the boy king in the act of preservation. One could imagine anything in this gesture. Just whose eyes did you think you would look out from anyway? The importance of recognition, this, not that, the ball moving in sunlight and the baby's head following it. I go where you go. Do you know me? I recognize you. I heard about you. Someone told me about you. Is it really you? A movie star in a restaurant, a ball in the dog's mouth. Get out of here. Don't. Get this. Mess up the carpet. Carpet. Mess up. Don't. Absolutely amazing. lilac like snakes, like moccasins, one of those words like salt that doesn't adhere. The mistake of origins, the mistake of knowing what is right, the mistake of questioning others' motives, the mistake of the hand relaxed, of looking at the hand too long, the mistake of looking at the ocean, of trying to catch something. And now I will close with 2 poems. My mind. Actually, I'll do 3 poems because they're short. My mind. He likes my mind. I do not like my mind, constrained and trailing flowers, the luminous archetype like skin separating and coming together. Breach and return, one motion and another, the large moon down the street and a man stopping traffic, some kind of warning, it takes longer this way. Arm gesture, angularity, a spill of natural, as though someone thought something through, the sound of flies and an open door, the lake visible, you cannot see it, someone swims in it. Origin. And this is just like one justified thing, it's not like individual lines, that's sort of important to it. Region is origin, document is living, stone is concrete, basement is raised, something under the basket, something underwater. He breathes too easily, her face doesn't remember it. Remember this, sorry. And now this is actually the favorite poem that I've ever written for me. It's called Past Muster, and Lee Chapman, who published this, she can't stand the title. She says it sounds like Past the Mustard, but now I said that so you all think Past the Mustard, but no, it's Past, P-A-S-T, Mustard. If you leave the road, you die. If you don't leave it, who will talk to you? Who will hold your hand and step forward, like a flag dipped in light, a crack in the sidewalk, the horse past mustard. Thank you.
I appreciated what you said about the poet embodying, you know, the sound, the translator, the sound of the source text. And I want to begin with that sound. The opening lines of the Iliad in Greek, and should be followed by so that, colon, because everything comes from these earliest lines of European poetry that we have. It's amazing that we possess them, I think. So I'm not going to give you a translation of these lines. It's just the opening lines of the Iliad, the invocation of the muse, so living being, the poet's own mind, and just bringing us into the theme of the Iliad, the anger of Achilles, the quarrel with Agamemnon, you know, the will of Zeus. Meninaide, Leia Jo Achilleos, Ulamene, Emuria Kaios, Alge Ethenge, Olas Niftimos Psukasa Idi Proiapsen Hero. Autusta Heloria Topia Kunasin, Oeonoisi Tapasi. Dios de Teleato Bule, Exude ta prota dias de te nerisante, atre ides de an axandron, Catios, Achilles. That's how it begins. What I'd like to read in translation, that's the very beginning of the Iliad. I'd like to read the very end of the Iliad. So you know the story, that Achilles, nursing his grudge against his commander-in-chief, Agamemnon, has stayed out of the war, and thereafter the Trojans won the upper hand and advanced all the way to the Greek beachhead camp, at which point Achilles relented a little and agreed not to fight himself, but to allow his beloved friend, Patroclus, to go out wearing his armor, so that the Trojans would think Achilles had returned, and he would be able to drive the Trojans back to give the Greeks some breathing space, what little there is in war. Patroclus succeeds in doing that, but he forgets Achilles' stern warning not to take on Hector, or to go for Troy itself. So Hector and Apollo kill Patroclus before the walls of Troy. Thereafter, Achilles' rage is deepened and redirected towards Hector. Actually, I think I do want to read a scene a little before the ending, when Achilles does first return to the battlefield. He has lost his armor, and Hector is wearing his armor. Achilles' mother, Thetis, has gone to Hephaestus and had a new set of armor forged for Achilles, and has delivered it to her son, and he now begins to arm. Snow flurries can come so thick and fast from the cold northern sky that the wind that bears them becomes an icy, blinding glare. So too the gleaming polished weaponry, the helmet, shields, spears, and plated corselets, all the bronze paraphernalia of war that issued from the ships. The rising glare reflected off the coppery sky, and the land beneath laughed under the arcing metallic glow. A deep bass thrumming rose from the marching feet, and like a bronze bolt in the center, Achilles, who now began to arm. His eyes glowed like white-hot steel, and he gritted his teeth against the grief that had sunk into his bones. And every motion he made in putting on the armor forged for him in heaven was an act of passion directed against the Trojans. Clasping on his shins the greaves trimmed in silver at the ankles, strapping the corselet onto his chest, slinging the silver-studded bronze sword around his shoulder, and then lifting the massive, heavy shield that spilled light around it as if it were the moon, or a fire that is flared up in a lonely settlement high in the hills of an island, reflecting light on the faces of men who have put out to sea and must watch helplessly as rising winds bear them away from their dear ones. So too the terrible beauty of Achilles' shield, a fire in the sky. So he arms. He meets Hector before the walls of Troy, and he kills Hector before the eyes of his father and mother. His wife Andromache hears the sound of the morning and comes to the walls herself just in time to see Hector's body being drawn behind Achilles' chariot back to the Greek camp. Achilles will not allow the body to be buried. He mutilates it. He drags it around Patroclus' tomb. And the gods eventually become outraged. They send Iris, the messenger goddess, to Priam. And a message comes to Achilles himself to expect a visit. And Priam goes out alone at night with a single attendant to drive the chariot to the beachhead camp. On the way, he's met by the god Hermes. It's a glimmering presence who greets Priam, tells him that he is one of Achilles' men, a Myrmidon, and that he will lead Priam to Achilles' hut. Once there, he reveals to Priam his true identity, and with that, Hermes left and returned to high Olympus. Priam jumped down and left Idaeus to hold the horses and mules. The old man went straight to the house where Achilles, dear to Zeus, sat and waited. Priam found him inside. Achilles' companion sat apart from him, and a solitary pair, Automedon and Alcinous, warriors both, were busy at his side. He had just finished his evening meal. The table was still set up. Great Priam entered unnoticed. He stood close to Achilles, and touching his knees, he kissed the dread and murderous hands that had killed so many of his sons. Passion sometimes blinds a man so completely that he kills one of his own countrymen. In exile, he comes to a wealthy house, and everyone stares at him in wonder. So Achilles stared in wonder at Priam. Was he a god? And the others there stared and wondered, looked at each other. But Priam spoke, a prayer of entreaty. Remember your father, godlike Achilles. He and I are both on the doorstep of old age. He may well be now, surrounded by enemies wearing him down, and have no one to protect him from harm. But then he hears that you are still alive, and his heart rejoices, and he hopes all his days to see his dear son come back from Troy. But what is left for me? I had the finest sons in all wide Troy, and not one of them is left. 50 I had when the Greeks came over. 19 out of one belly, and the rest the women my house bore to me. It doesn't matter how many they were. The god of war has cut them down at the knees, and the only one who could save the city you've just now killed as he fought for his country, my Hector. It is for him I have come to the Greek ships to get him back from you. I brought a fortune in ransom. Respect the gods, Achilles. Think of your own father and pity me. I am more pity. I have borne what no man who has walked this earth has ever yet borne. I have kissed the hand of the man who killed my son. He spoke, and sorrow for his own father welled up in Achilles. He took Priam's hand and gently pushed the old man away. The two of them remembered. Priam, huddled in grief at Achilles' feet, cried and moaned softly for his man-slaying Hector. And Achilles cried for his father and for Patroclus. The sound filled the room. When Achilles had his fill of grief, and the aching sorrow left his heart, he rose from his chair and lifted the old man by his hand, pitying his white hair and beard, and his words enfolded him like wings. The suffering you've had, and the courage to come here alone to the Greek ships and meet my eye, the man who slaughtered your many fine sons. You have a heart of iron. Come, sit on this chair. Let our pain lie at rest for a while, no matter how much we hurt. There's nothing to be gained from cold grief. The gods have woven pain into mortal lives, while they are free from care. 2 jars sit at the doorstep of Zeus, filled with gifts that he gives, one full of good things, the other of evil.
If Zeus gives a man a mixture from both jars, sometimes life is good for him, sometimes not. But if all he gives you is from the jar of woe, you become a pariah, dishonored by gods and men, and hunger drives you over the bright earth. Now take Peleus, my father. The gods gave him splendid gifts from the day he was born. He was the happiest and richest man on earth, king of the Myrmidons. And although he was a mortal, the gods gave him an immortal goddess to be his wife. But even to Peleus, the god gave some evil. He would not leave offspring to succeed him in power. Just one child, all out of season. I can't be with him to take care of him now that he's old, since I'm far from my fatherland, squatting here in Troy, tormenting you and your children. And you, old sir. We hear that you were prosperous once, from Lesbos down south, clear over to Phrygia and up to the Hellespont's boundary. No one could match you in wealth or insolence. But then the gods have brought you trouble, this constant fighting and killing around your town. You must endure this grief. Not constantly grieve. You will not gain anything by torturing yourself over the good son you lost, not bring him back. Sooner you will suffer some other sorrow. And Priam, old, godlike, answered him, "Don't sit me in a chair, Prince, while Hector lies uncared for in your heart. Deliver him now, so I can see him with my own eyes. And you take all this ransom we bring, take pleasure, and go back home to your own fatherland, since you've taken this first step and allowed me to live and see the light of day." Achilles glowered at him and said, "Don't provoke me, old man. It's my own decision to release Hector to you. A messenger came to me from Zeus, my own natural mother, daughter of the old sea god, and I know you, Priam, inside out. You don't fool me one bit. Some god escorted you to the Greek ships. No mortal would have dared come into our camp, not even your best young hero. He couldn't have gotten past the guards or muscled open the gate. So just stop stirring up grief in my heart, or I might not let you out of here alive, old man, suppliant though you are, and sin against Zeus." The old man was afraid and did as he was told. The son of Peleus leapt up like a lion, followed by Automedon and Optimus, whom Achilles honored most now that Patroclus was dead. They unyoked the horses and mules and led the old man's herald inside and seated him on a chair. Then they unloaded from the strong-wheeled cart the endless ransom that was Hector's blood price, leaving behind 2 robes and a fine spun tunic for the body to be wrapped in and brought inside. Achilles called the women and ordered them to wash the body well and anoint it with oil, removing it first for fear that Priam might see his son, and in his grief be unable to control his rage at the sight of his child, and that this would arouse Achilles' passion, and he would kill the old man, and so sin against the commandments of Zeus. After the female slaves had bathed Hector's body and anointed it with olive, they wrapped it round the beautiful robe and tunic, and Achilles himself lifted him up and placed him on a pallet, and with his friends raised it onto the polished cart. Then he groaned and called out to Patroclus, "Don't be angry with me, dear friend, if somehow you find out, even in Hades, that I have released Hector to his father. He paid a handsome price, and I will share it with you, as much as is right." Achilles re-entered his hut and sat down again in his ornately decorated chair across the room from Priam, and said to him, "Your son is released, sir, just as you ordered. He is lying on a pallet. At dawn's first light, You will go see him yourself. Now let's think about supper. Even Niobe remembered to eat, although her 12 children were dead in her house, 6 daughters and 6 sturdy sons. Apollo killed them with his silver bow, and Artemis showering arrows, angry with Niobe because she compared herself to their mother, beautiful Leto. Leto, she said, had borne only 2, while she had borne many. Well, these 2 killed them all. 9 days they lied in their gore, with no one to bury them, because Zeus had turned the people to stone. On the 10th day, the gods buried them. But Niobe remembered she had to eat, exhausted from weeping. Now, she is one of the rocks in the lonely hills somewhere in Sipylus, a place they say is haunted by nymphs who dance on the Achelous banks. And although she is stone, she broods on the sorrows the gods gave her. So should we, old sir, remember to eat. You can mourn your son later, when you bring him to Troy. You owe him many tears. A moment later, Achilles was up and had slain a silvery sheep. His companions flayed it and prepared it for a meal, sliced it, spitted it, roasted the morsels, and drew them off the spits. Automedon set out bread in exquisite baskets, while Achilles served the meat. They helped themselves, satisfied their desire for food and drink. Then Priam, son of Dardanus, gazed for a while at Achilles, so big, so beautiful, so much like one of the gods. And Achilles returned his gaze, admiring Priam's face, his words echoing in his mind. When they had their fill of gazing at each other, Priam, old and godlike, broke the silence. Show me to my bed now, Prince, and quickly, so that at long last I can have the pleasure of sleep. My eyes have not closed since my son lost his life under your hands. I have done nothing but groan and brood over my countless sorrows, rolling in the dung of my courtyard stables. Finally, I have tasted food and let flaming wine pass down my throat. I had eaten nothing till now. Achilles ordered his companions and women to set bedsteads on the porch and pad them with fine dyed rugs, spread blankets on top, and cover them over with fleecy cloaks. The women went out with torches in their hands and quickly made up 2 beds. And Achilles, the great sprinter, said in a bitter tone, "You'll have to sleep outside, dear Priam. One of the Achaean counselors may come in, as they always do, to sit and talk with me, as well they should. If one of them saw you here in the dead of night, he would tell Agamemnon, and that would delay releasing the body. But tell me this as precisely as you can. How many days do you need for the funeral? I will wait that long and hold back the army." And the old man, godlike Priam, answered, "If you really want me to bury my Hector, then you could do this for me, Achilles. You know how we are penned in the city, far from any timber, and the Trojans are afraid. We would mourn him for 9 days in our halls, and bury him on the 10th, and feast the people. And on the 11th, we would heap a barrow over him, and on the 12th day, fight. If fight we must." And Achilles strong, swift, and godlike. You will have your armistice. And he clasped the old man's wrist so he would not be afraid. And so they slept. Priam and his herald in the covered courtyard, each with a wealth of thoughts in his breast. But Achilles slept inside his well-built hut, and by his side lay lovely Briseis. Gods and heroes slept the night through, wrapped in soft slumber. Only Hermes lay awake in the dark, pondering how to spirit King Priam away from the ships and elude the strong watchmen at the camp's gates. He hovered above Priam's head and spoke. Well, old man, you seem to think it's safe to sleep on and on in the enemy camp, since Achilles spared you. Think what it cost you to ransom your son. Your own life will cost 3 times that much to the sons you have left, if Agamemnon and the Greeks know you are here. Suddenly the old man was afraid. He woke up the herald. Hermes harnessed the horses and mules and drove them through the camp. No one noticed. When they reached the ford of the Xanthus, the beautiful swirling river that Zeus begot, Hermes left for the long peaks of Olympus. Dawn spread her saffron light over earth, and they drove the horses into the city with great lamentation. The mules pulled the corpse. No one in Troy, man or woman, saw them before Cassandra. And she stood like golden Aphrodite on Pergamon's height. Looking out, she saw her dear father standing in the chariot with the herald. And then she saw Hector lying on the stretcher in the mule cart. And her cry went out through all the city. Come, look upon Hector. Trojan men and women, if ever you rejoiced when he came home alive from battle, a joy to the city and to its people. She spoke, and there was not a man or woman left in the city, for an unbearable sorrow had come upon them. They met Priam by the gates as he brought the body through, and in the front, Hector's dear wife and queenly mother threw themselves on the rolling cart and pulled out their hair as they clasped his head amid the grieving crowd. They would have mourned Hector outside the gates all the long day until the sun went down, had not the old man spoken from the chariot. Let the mules come through. Later, you will have your fill of grieving when I have brought him home. He spoke, and the crowd made way for the cart. And they brought him home and laid him on a corded bed and set around him singers to lead the dirge and chant the death song. They chanted the dirge and the women with them. White-armed Andromache led the lamentation as she cradled the head of her man-slaying Hector. You have died, young husband, and left me a widow in the halls. Our son is still an infant, doomed when we bore him. I do not think he will ever reach manhood. No, this city will topple and fall first. You were its savior, and now you're lost. All the solemn wives and children you guarded will go off soon in the hollow ships, and I will go with them. And you, my son, you will either come with me and do menial labor for a cruel master, or some Greek will lead you by the hand and throw you from the tower. A hideous death, angry because Hector killed his brother or his father or son. Many, many Greeks fell in battle under Hector's hands. Your father was never gentle in combat. So all the townspeople mourn for him. And you have caused your parents unspeakable sorrow, Hector, and left me endless pain. You did not stretch your hand out to me as you lay dying in bed, nor did you whisper a final word I could remember as I weave all the days and nights of my life. The women's moans washed over her lament, and from the sobbing came Hecuba's voice. Hector, my heart, dearest of all my children, the gods loved you when you were alive for me, and they have cared for you also in death. My other children, Achilles sold as slaves when he captured them, shipped them overseas to Samos, Imbros, and barren Lemnos. After he took your life with tapered browns, he dragged you around Patroclus' tomb, his friend, whom you killed, but still could not bring him back. And now, you lie here for me as fresh as dew, although you have been slain, like one whom Apollo has killed softly with his silver arrows. The third woman to lament was Helen. Oh, Hector, you are the dearest to me by far of all my husband's brothers. Yes, Paris is my husband, the godlike prince who led me to Troy. I should have died first. This is now the 20th year since I went away and left my home. And I have never had an unkind word from you. If anyone in the house ever taunted me, any of my husband's brothers or sisters or his mother, my father-in-law was kind always. You would draw them aside and calm them with your gentle heart and gentle words. And so I weep for you and for myself, and my heart is heavy because there is no one left in all wide Troy who will pity me or be my friend. Everyone shudders at me. And the people's moan came in over her voice. Then the old man Priam spoke to his people. Men of Troy, start bringing wood to the city and have no fear of an Argive ambush. When Achilles sent me from the black ships, he gave his word he would not trouble us until the 12th day should dawn. He spoke, and they yoked oxen and mules to wagons and gathered outside the city. For 9 days they hauled in loads of timber. When the 10th dawn showed her mortal light, they brought out their brave Hector, and all in tears lifted the body high onto the bier and threw on the fire. Light blossomed like roses in the eastern sky. The people gathered around Hector's pyre, and when all of Troy was assembled there, they drowned the last flames with glinting wine. Hector's brothers and friends collected his white bones, their cheeks flowered with tears. They wrapped the bones in soft purple robes and placed them in a golden casket and laid it in the hollow of the grave and heaped above it a mantle of stone.
soldiers. They built the tomb quickly, with lookouts posted all around, in case the Greeks should attack early. When the tomb was built, they all returned to the city and assembled for a glorious feast in the house of Priam, Zeus's cherished king. That was the funeral of Hector, breaker of horses. Thank you. I hope you can see why I'm not dare read any of my poetry.